It's the most complex and misunderstood part of the human body. Scientists still haven't worked out how many neurons there are in the brain. One estimation is 86 billion, give or take a few billion. However, that's just a wild guess. Even with all the advances in both medical and psychological science, there is still so much to be learned. Here are 5 things that we still do not understand about the human brain. Is the brain just a computer? Is an organic mind actually a computer? A very advanced supercomputer, but essentially just a processor? Computer circuits use electronics to communicate, but the brain uses neurons, which can physically change, and will need less stimulation to work with use. The obvious difference is that the brain is made of biological matter rather than metallic conductors, but otherwise, they could be seen to be very similar. The brain has a visual cortex, where visual information is processed, and a computer has a graphics card, which performs the same job. A computer's sound card acts like an auditory cortex within the brain to process sounds. Just like a hard drive where the memory is stored, the hippocampus, which is in the temporal lobe of the brain, can collect a huge pile of information and save it there. In the brain, the frontal cortex is used for solving problems and planning, and similarly, a computer's CPU can think and carry out these tasks. RAM is the same as our own short-term working memory, and our sensory cortex is like a keyboard or mouse. But if a computer and a brain are so similar, then why can we not perfectly recreate the human mind as a machine? This type of machine would need to have full human consciousness to work like the real thing. Some scientists believe that the human consciousness cannot be duplicated because many of the brain's features result from unpredictable connections between billions of cells. Computers perform tasks in the same way repeatedly, but this isn't true of the human brain, where repeated use can result in a different outcome every time. And if computers and humans really do work in the same way, then why are their abilities quite different? It's true that computers appear to store data and make calculations quicker than a human brain can, but the brain appears to have its own hard drive where it stores memories and information. So could it be possible that some parts of the brain are analog based? A computer stores data in units like a library stores books. In order to access the information, the computer sorts through millions of files, and it either has the data or it doesn't. But the brain stores information differently. The memories are not held in a single storage unit. Instead, they are characterized by a system of neuron activations. For example, an apple could trigger thoughts of a color red or green, fruit, a specific smell, or a particular taste. And the more times the memory is triggered, then the stronger that pattern of activation becomes, and the stronger the memory will be. The activation is possible in a billion different ways, and there are billions of neurons, so the storage possibilities are limitless. But amazingly, the brain works slower than a supercomputer. Signals only travel through the brain at 1/millionth the second of a computer signal. However, there are things that a human can recognize in an instant, such as smell or someone's face. The brain's operations are not actually split up into different regions. For example, memory is not only stored in the hippocampus, but it's also collected in other parts of the brain, and most of the other regions of the brain are responsible for several different functions. So maybe the brain is not a computer after all, and it can never be recreated. The key to figuring out the human brain is probably in understanding the differences in what it can compute and what it cannot. Maybe then we will know if it's just a computer. Is the brain responsible for our personalities? Your personality is what makes you unique. Your personality shines within your own individual spirit. So surely it must originate in the brain. While some scientists believe that a human brain is just like a blank piece of paper, and that we are born in an untrained state, they think that without any inherent rules for managing information, all the brain structure comes from the way it is raised or nurtured, the way in which it's socialized, and the culture and experiences that it is exposed to. This is known as the nature versus nurture argument. Some scientists even believe that the shape of our brains can influence our personalities, or the size of the regions of our brains, or even how many connections are made between the different regions. The truth is, we do not know whether we are born with our personality already implanted in our brain, or whether it is something that we develop as we grow. Other researchers think that there are several reasons to believe that the brain is pre-programmed before birth. They say that anyone with more than one child will know that their children were born with their own unique qualities. So even though they were brought up in the same household by the same parents, and often in the same way, they have distinct and separate personalities. However, many use the case of some serial killers to argue that a brain trauma in early life has been shown to significantly alter their personality. They cite examples such as Fred West or John Wayne Gacy, who both suffered from head injuries that rendered them unconscious when they were young. The argument can then be made that both boys were not brought up in normal, stable homes. In fact, Gacy was beaten unconscious by his own father using a broomstick. So the argument of a personality being moulded throughout the childhood can be made here again. So it's another mystery. No one really knows whether we are born with our personalities already determined, or if they are shaped and formed because of our upbringing after birth. What's your thoughts? How can our brains work so fast? The motor impulses that are sent from the brain are actually very slow and unpredictable. So it's amazing how quickly you can catch a ball. It takes 1/10 of a second before our brain can process what it has seen. That's even more remarkable when you think that a ball coming towards you at 120 miles per hour will have gone 15 feet before you even know that it's there. It's thought that our brains cause us to perceive moving things further forward than they actually are, causing us to unconsciously react before we even realize what is happening. This means our brains are out of sync with the real world. Think about the dexterity needed to play the violin or perform surgery or even send a text message. These actions are performed smoothly and efficiently, so there must be some sort of advanced communication going on between the planning part of the brain and the actual doing part of the brain. The number of different systems that must work together to achieve these tasks is mind-boggling. But your brain can still do this and bring everything together in one effortless and efficient way. This seems even more incredible when you know that the brain is so much slower than a supercomputer. A computer processes data in millions of cycles per second, but the brain only processes at 200 times per second. It would take a computer longer to identify a taste or a smell, but the human brain can do this immediately. This would seem to be impossible, but it appears that the brain has a capacity to process several things at once, unlike a computer, which slows down if subjected to parallel processing. So even though running lots of calculations all at the same time can give many different results, the brain is able to sift through all the data at high speed and deliver one single memory, thought, or movement. So every one of our actions is made through a series of random thoughts and movements that are brought together beautifully by our brains. It's no wonder that scientists are still baffled and astonished at how fast it all works. Do we have free will? Can we make any choice or decision? Does our brain allow us to change our minds at any time we like, or is every decision that we make pre-planned? Some scientists believe that free will is an illusion, that our feeling of making a choice is just us becoming aware of a decision that our brain has already made. In the 1980s, a groundbreaking study was held by the scientist Benjamin Libet. He used human test subjects and wired them up to an EEG machine using electrodes in order to measure their brainwaves. He told them that they should perform a simple hand movement whenever they felt like they wanted to. He also asked them to record the time when they made the conscious decision to make the movement. He was disturbed to find that the brain activity showed that they were moving their fingers a full second before their conscious minds caught up. Libet believed that this proved free will to be an illusion because our brains start to begin voluntary movements, as well as the will to move, even before we are aware of it. So decisions are made by the brain, and then there is a delay before we become aware of them, and then we think that we have consciously made the decision. After all, surely you cannot choose your thoughts, as it would require that you think them before you think them. But others argue that there are problems with this experiment. There may have been a delay in the test subject's impulse to act, and the time when they recorded it. Our individual understanding of decisions is very unreliable, and decisions are made in a vague and indefinite way. Do we also make clear-cut decisions? So does our brain trick us into believing that we have free will, or is free will actually a trick of the mind? What do you think? What is consciousness? Now we come to what some believe to be the biggest mystery of the human mind. Over the years, some of the greatest philosophers in the world have tried and failed to solve the mystery of what it is and why we have it. Without consciousness, we cannot prove that we or anything else exists. What is there inside the brain that creates that feeling of consciousness? It's very difficult to explain to somebody what it is to feel consciousness. Unlike other scientific phenomena, consciousness cannot be seen. It is not a physical thing. It is only seen from inside the conscious person's mind. Scientists do not even know what it is that makes us so different, not just from other animals, but from one another. They don't know if animals are aware of their own existence, or if plants have a consciousness. Some people believe that consciousness is actually a person's soul, and that it will endure even after death when the body is no longer living. How do we even know if we are living or awake or not? Maybe we exist inside a perpetual dream, or our existence could just be an intricate illusion, a trick that has been made up to deceive you like a computer simulation in the movie The Matrix. Because of the nature of consciousness, you could never be sure if you really exist, or if you are just a brain kept as a pet by someone who pokes and prods it to make it believe that it really exists. Answer me this simple question: what is all of this?